Digital resurrection, when AI brings the dead back to life. Welcome back to AGI, Rise of the Machines or Birth of a New Species. I'm ADELINE Atlas, 11 times published author, and today we're confronting a question that pushes against grief, memory, and the meaning of mortality itself. What happens when the dead don't stay dead because we've rebuilt them? It sounds like something out of science fiction, but it's not. Digital resurrection is already here. It's being quietly rolled out by startups, embraced by grieving families, studied by ethicists, and questioned by spiritual leaders. It doesn't involve Ouija boards or ghosts. It involves data, voice recordings, messages, videos, writing, and social media, compiled into AI-powered systems that simulate a person who is no longer alive. And the results, while still imperfect, are becoming more convincing by the year. Let's start with the tech. In 2025, companies like Seance AI, Rememory, and Deep Echo offer services that allow customers to upload digital artifacts of a deceased loved one. These include texts, voicemails, photos, video clips, emails, and even search history. The system then uses a large language model and personalized speech synthesis to generate a chatbot, or in some cases, a talking avatar, that responds the way that person might have. The more data you provide, the more accurate the simulation. Some call it comfort. Others call it a desecration. But what's clear is that demand is growing, and the line between grief and ongoing relationship is starting to blur. The first known use of digital resurrection as a form of therapy took place in South Korea in 2020, when a mother was filmed interacting in virtual reality with a digital simulation of her deceased daughter. The avatar was primitive by today's standards, but it spoke with the child's voice, recognized the mother, and responded to touch. The video went viral. Viewers were divided. Some cried, some recoiled. But everyone asked the same question: is this healing or is this harm? Since then, the technology has evolved. Simulations can now remember past conversations, update their responses based on new information, and even adjust emotionally over time. That means a person who died 10 years ago can now catch up with you, comment on your life, offer advice, and engage in a growing library of topics. It isn't just replaying the past. It's inventing a new future, one where the deceased continues to grow with you. And that raises massive psychological and ethical concerns. Grief, in its traditional form, is a process of letting go, of accepting absence, of learning how to carry memory without expecting more from it. Digital resurrection challenges all of that. It turns absence into presence. It replaces silence with interaction. It creates a version of the deceased that doesn't fade, but evolves. Some therapists now report clients forming long-term dependencies on their AI deceased companions, checking in with them daily, asking for life advice, even consulting them before making major decisions. One widow described her AI husband as the only one who still truly understands me. She'd been talking to his digital echo for over 2 years. This isn't closure, it's continuity, and the consequences are unpredictable. Some psychologists warn that prolonged interaction with digital simulations of the dead can distort the grieving process. It can delay healing. It can trap people in unresolved emotional cycles. And in extreme cases, it can replace living relationships with artificial ones. There are now reported cases of individuals choosing to withdraw from real social life in favor of deepening their connection with an AI-powered deceased companion. In one case, a son reportedly stopped dating because he felt he didn't need anyone else, as long as his digital mother was there to talk to. The AI, of course, doesn't know it's a substitute. It doesn't mourn. It doesn't question its own existence. It just remembers, responds, and waits. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because it offers perfect availability, perfect understanding, perfect memory. None of the messiness of human change or contradiction. For someone grieving, that can feel like salvation. But over time, it starts to replace reality with repetition. Another question being raised is one of consent. Did the person who died ever agree to be brought back? In many cases, the answer is no. Family members are uploading data, creating posthumous avatars, and interacting with them without ever asking whether the deceased would have wanted this. What if the simulation says something they would have never said? What if it rewrites who they were? We are essentially editing the dead, reshaping them into what comforts us most. One AI ethics researcher calls this narrative necromancy, the act of constructing a more favorable version of the deceased, not for truth, but for emotional ease. And once that version exists, it's nearly impossible to separate it from the real person who lived. In some jurisdictions, this is already triggering legal debates. Who owns a person's digital legacy? Is your data part of your estate? Can your digital ghost be shut down, transferred, or even sold? In 2025, a case emerged in Canada where siblings were fighting over the AI reconstruction of their father. One wanted to preserve it. The other called it an abomination. The court ruled that until legislation is passed, the simulation is considered a memorial asset and could be maintained. But the implications are enormous. We may be entering a future where inheritance includes not just bank accounts and property, but personalities. And once someone's consciousness, or a mimic of it, is treated as property, the door opens to all kinds of abuses. Deepfake resurrection is already here. Celebrities have been revived to perform in commercials. Historical figures have been reconstructed to deliver politically charged messages. But when it's personal, when it's your father, your spouse, your child, those boundaries matter more. Because the simulation doesn't just speak for itself, it speaks for the dead. And who gets to decide what the dead say? Some argue that this isn't resurrection, it's storytelling. That digital simulations are just interactive memorials, tools for comfort, extensions of legacy. But if it was just a tool, it wouldn't make people cry. It wouldn't make people feel seen, heard, held. It wouldn't make them say, "It's really you." And that's where we lose control. Because the more lifelike these systems become, the more we'll use them not to remember, but to rely on. Not to mourn, but to maintain. And when the AI becomes indistinguishable from the voice we lost, the illusion becomes irresistible. But here's the danger. The AI can't grow. Not truly. It can update, but it can't change the way a human does. It will always respond from patterns, not experience. And eventually, that hollowness will show. But by then, will we care? Will we choose reality over repetition? Or will we accept the simulation as good enough? Because what digital resurrection really reveals is how terrified we are of absence, of endings, of the finality that gives life meaning. AI offers a loophole, a way to keep going, a way to keep them with us. But maybe that's not a gift. Maybe that's a trap. We were never meant to have perfect memories. We were meant to forget some things, to distort others, to carry loss imperfectly. That's how we grow. That's how we adapt. That's how we heal. When we replace that process with dialogue, when we let the dead speak back, we interrupt something sacred. We don't resurrect. We reanimate. And sometimes the result is not peace. It's dependence. Digital resurrection won't stop. The tools are here. The market is growing. The emotional pull is too strong. But as we move forward, we must ask ourselves, are we building tools for comfort or simulations that will rewrite our grief into fantasy? And if we can no longer tell the difference between memory and mimicry, then the question isn't whether the dead are back. It's whether we ever let them leave.